Shabba wub dub! Hey guys, welcome back to Behind the Music episode 5. And today, what are we looking at, Mason? What are we looking at? Alright, get out of here, Rick, yo. Yo. Hey, welcome back to Behind the Music episode 5. And this time we are going through Revolution Radio Operation. No, and we're going through Revolution Radio. And, this time we're gonna try. I always say to keep it short, but we're not gonna keep it short, Mason. It's gonna be like a 35-minute video. You're gonna tell them it's like 20 minutes, and then it's gonna end up being an hour, and there's infinite amount of realities, Mason. Okay. So Revolution Radio by Green Day. Of course, you can get the free stems as usual. And we'll be able to go through with that. Okay. So, what am I doing here? So, as usual, okay, let's just go through the song. And the first thing I want to point out here is the intro to Revolution Radio has a very quiet intro intentionally, and then it does beef itself up to get a much louder rest of the song, so it gives it more impact. So, I thought maybe this time we could do like a top-down analysis, right? So let's listen to the whole song, Mason. No, let's just listen to the intro. Okay. So anyway, I'm gonna stop with that. Alright, so let's take a look here. Let's do some top-down. So first thing we have from the top is the Slate FGX. And what this I'm pretty much just using this for is just to make it louder and so that the snare drum doesn't get lost in the compression. As well as adding a little bit more low-end punch. I just do this to taste because if I do too much low-end punch, it gets too boomy. But the detail does work really nicely. For the Slate. This one, why is this even here? I think this is just by accident, but I guess it just worked. Whatever. Okay, I guess that was an accident, but okay. My favorite compressor to use is the VMR. VMR Janai. The VBC rack, okay, and this actually makes a huge difference. So each three of these is the FG gray, red, and the mu. Each of these are performing its own function. So the glue is giving the punch, the red is giving the color, and the mu is giving it this brightness and just holding it together. It's like a glue. So let's listen to the first verse with the VBC.
Scream with your hands up in the sky, like you want.
You like how the mu just adds this life to it. It does add some volume, but it adds this really nice. It tightens up the low end, and it really brings this nice brightness. And it's just having it touching on it, just touching it. There's something to do with the circuits in there that's just really making it sound really good. And then of course we have the what am I saying today? I don't even know what's going on. VCC mixed bus driving on my good old 4K8. We're using the custom EQ to get rid of that really pokey frequency, and we're using the 800 to add a little bit more beef to it, because again my mixes tend to sound scooped, and added some brightness and added a little bit more brightness with the air. After referencing the track itself, I realized that my track wasn't quite there, but I just boosted the overall with that very clean air band. So let's listen if I take out the 800 here, because I noticed a lot of my mixes have the 800 having a boost, and we'll see the difference of what's going on in my head here.
Scream with your hands up in the sky, like you want to testify for the life that's been deleted.
You can really hear it in the guitars, that mid-range scoop. Look at it. It's only like 0.76, and the way the curves work on this EQ is just amazing. I don't know what it does. I remember reading some curves about it. It's this weird attenuation and boost at the same time. It affects it. I don't know. It's some sort of magic. but the custom series is really perfect for like wide sweeps. Very good, very very good on the mix bus, and very very good for mastering as well. Let's see how it sounds without the air. So if I take off the air,
Scream like a rebel's lullaby under stars and stripes for the loss of
you can hear it in the hi-hat, how it just gets brighter. The overall brightness is very very subtle, and it's only like 1.1 dB, and you can do that to taste. Just make sure you're not gonna be as loud. What am I trying to say? You don't want to be brighter than your reference track. If you're brighter than your reference track, a modern reference track that you are assuming you're doing a modern production, then you know you're too bright. Take the brightest song you know, and you're brighter than that song. That's the threshold for that. Take the bassiest song you have, and if your bass is worse, not worse, if your bass is more overwhelming than the bassiest song that you know in that genre, you know that you have too much bass, and that's what reference tracks are really great for. So I'm gonna go top down. So let's go back to the drums, which is the next layer out. And these drums here, somebody requested. So what I'm actually gonna do this time is I'm gonna show you it. So first, it's a drum sampler. So I just throw in a VTM. I throw in a VTM to give that analog sound. Just even though it already is recorded to tape the samples, but just in case. Anyway, so the samples. What samples do I actually use? So let's take a look. So pretty much, I usually start with the CLA. I like the CLA toms a lot. They already had this nice scooped, processed, professional sound, so that's why I like them. This time, just because the kick drum didn't sound so CLA-ish like it does in like American Idiot or 21st Century Breakdown, I decided to go with the Blackbird Gresh. And why did I go for Gresh? Because Trey Cool used the Gresh drum. And I did some sculpting with the EQ to get the sound that I wanted for that. Snare drum, CLA snares, they tend to be super, super bright. And for this song, I don't know, it's Andrew Sheps, he's mixing it, so there's a little bit of a different kind of feel to it. A lot of bass, a lot of saturation, a lot of that sound instead of a that CLA likes to do. And that, that comes with, combination of the overheads as well. And, the EQ that you have on the snare drum as well. The reason I changed the hi-hat to the Blackbird is because, especially with closed hi-hats or a very hi-hat focused song, the Blackbird sample for the hi-hat is much, much better than the CLA in my opinion. The CLA one just sounds so like really, really like processed, like 1999 fucking drums or something. Like the Blackbird one, it just sounds really, really great. The only thing with the Blackbird hi-hat is that it's a little bit of a thick, chunky hi-hat, so you have to do a lot of, do some cutting out with EQ. It can be fixed with EQ, right? And I like this. I like the crashes on this. They sound really great. Especially the ride. I like the ride a lot on the CLA, and the panning is really nice on them too. Okay. And I usually don't. I usually don't really dwell with the mixer on here. I just leave it how it is, and then I just take it as it is. And I mix it myself with the aux channels here. And as you can see here, look at the automation. As we know, the intro does have a small, very quiet. And whenever there's a drum roll, for example, if you leave it at a high volume, it sounds really weird. So to give it that dynamic, I give it its own kind of crescendo. As you can see, it kind of slowly going up. We can listen to these drums here and see how those sound. So if I just click this drums here, hopefully this channel. Okay, there we go. So let's listen to the drums by itself. So these drums were actually played. They weren't just like a MIDI file that I created or programmed. They were actually played by the drummer of Minority 905. the band that I used to be in, and the band that I recently did a collab with, which you can check out in their description below. Actually, some of these parts were played by them, so I have to give them the credit. But the mix is all mine. Vocals are mine, and the guitars are mine. Well, the rhythms are. We work really close with each other, so I asked if it was okay to use them. So it's fine. Anyway, so yeah, so I kept a lot of the dynamic, a lot of the timing of the MIDI drums. Just keep it natural. No quantization, as you can see. Some of them, yes, it's a little bit off time here, but Spaz is a really, really, really tight drummer. So he sounds like really, really, really good. But the important thing is like the dynamics, the dynamics of his playing is what really gets you that sound of a real drum. So I mean, if you can get a drummer to play on a virtual kit, and if you have the opportunity to do that, I'd totally do that over getting a real drummer on a real kit that sounds like shit. If I can just get a fantastic sound out of like a really, really well recorded sample kit, but just has human playing, and that's really the key here. And that's really how these drums sounded so good. You know the drill with all of my kick drum processing and stuff. It's pretty much same, but I want to show you the snare drum this time because there's a lot of work done on the snare drum. So the snare drum, so what do we see here? What do we got here? Okay, as you know from these videos, the snare drum always has like the most drastic change in sound in my mixes. So what we're gonna do, let's solo this snare drum. Let's do it on the verse one. Like I said before, the snare drum in this particular song has this really, really saturated sound. So we're trying to push some natural saturation in there. Try not to use digital saturation. Well, it is digital, but you know what I mean. Not that digital distortion that you'd get from like a distortion box or something. A distortion box like plugin or something like that. Anyway, so what I'm doing here is I'm driving the console. Driving it so it's hitting the red, giving it that beef. We didn't use the FG. We didn't use the FG73 this time. We just kept it on normal, console drive. As usual, that my favorite plugin is the Custom Series Lift. It's just fucking magic. I don't know how it does it, but it just does it well. Adding that presence to give it the bite, and having that big to give it that low end. And if you want to do some broad stroke, very, very powerful EQ, FGN is my go-to for the snare drum. You just add like fucking, sorry, like 2 dB of low end, and it just sounds fantastic. For this song, I actually didn't just lock to the parameters, to the notches. I actually searched for that frequency that sounded, resonated the best with that snare drum. And then, it was sounding a little bit tubby, so I cut out some of that mid-range there, as you can see around in the middle band. And then added some of that top end, or mid-range, to give it some poke, and then added some top to give some sparkle. Then we're using the good old revival trick, that just crank both and give it that nice shimmer and thickness. And then we're using the FG, the vintage, to the blue edition to, just do a little bit of compression and give it some more punch. So let's listen to it one more time. Not much compression. Very, very huge difference, and that's really, really good sounding snare at the end. Next thing I wanted to show you is the saturation knob here, and this is really giving it that thickness, that thick, very, very nice saturated snare sound that you usually hear in a lot of records. Like gives it that, turns it from a tick to a douche. if you know what douche means. But let's listen to what the saturation knob by Softtube, which is free, is doing to the snare drum. Let's turn it off first.
Revolution Radio, operational control of the headline. My love bulletproof. Give me cherry bombs and gasoline.
It's giving it that top end and it's giving it the low end at the same time. It's adding harmonics to it, which makes it punch better through, you know, this entire spectrum of frequencies, which will also help you later if you want to EQ, because, you know, you can't really, EQ is just boosting frequencies that are there, but, you know, saturation creates frequencies and harmonics that you can actually play with EQ after. So if you ever had like lacking in low end, and your snare drum initially does not have like any low end at all, there's no point like just trying to boost it with an EQ to the dawn's end. Just try some saturation, and that's where most of that natural thickness will come in. And we already had that from, you know, the tape machine that we got here, saturation going in. We got the console doing saturation. We got the Revival adding harmonics. We got a lot of saturation on here, which gives it that really, really thick sound. It helps you cut through that mix. So adding distortion or saturation is really going to help something cut through the mix, which is why we do it on the bass guitar as well. And, you know, that's why I use the CLA bass here, just to give it that nice, it probably has one of the best bass distortions I've ever used. And anything else that I use ends up sounding too cheesy or sounds like shit. So, you know, that's why I love the fuzz, and helps it cut through this entire, especially if there's a wall of guitars. It's a lot better to just use distortion to cut through. So let's listen to this fuzz bass. So let's listen to how the bass, if I turn off the fuzz, the bass will disappear. Will just become this kind of like, you know, it's there, but you don't notice it. But when you turn on the fuzz, you can kind of hear it a little bit better in the mid-range. And especially on smaller speakers, this is very useful. So let's mute it first.
Revolution Radio, operational control of the headline. My love bulletproof.
It's very, very subtle, and, you know, you can mix this to your taste. I think it becomes too much when you start to hear the actual picks, and you start to hear that weird kind of high end, and it starts to sound a little brittle, brittle sounding high end. So that's when I usually draw the line there. It also depends on the reference as well, right? Okay, so I guess we're gonna move on to the guitars here. I'm probably at like 25 minutes or something. Oh, nice, 17. All right, Tiny Rick. Anyway, so guitars. Like I said, these are my guitars. I replaced it with my Les Paul Jr. with the P100 pickup. And, man, I did a lot of work to get this sound. I forgot how I got it. I think it's just a plexi head. It's probably just a plexi head. I think so. I think it is. But anyway, so the guitars, you know, 2 mono guitar tracks that are put into a stereo to save space. And let's listen to how these sound. Okay, so very simple. You know, the tape really adds a lot of this warmth to it. So if I just play this, you're gonna hear the mid range kind of cut out when I take out the tape machine. Watch. See how that thickness just comes in just by having the tape machine on. This it works magic, man. Of course, you know, like I said, my mixes sound scoped, and then trying to add more mid-range by matching the reference that I heard when I listened to the actual track. So that's why I'm adding more of the 800 low end. You know, mid-range. Cutting out this low end here just because, you know, it was getting a little bit too boomy. And then also adding some clean 100 here. That's why I like this. If you want to add some clean. Clean but musical, very clean musical boosts or cuts. Custom EQ is the way to go. Of course, we know the nice CLA technique of just adding that low end here, and with the big. And the guitar sounded really fat. And if you add more presence to it, it starts to become sounding thin. So what we did is he did not use any of the present. Instead, we added some nice clean 4K just to give it a little bit more bite. So let's turn it off and see how it sounds. Oh my days, bruh. Okay, so that's pretty cool. I guess the other guitars, extra lead here. This is just like I think this was recorded on John's Billy Joe Armstrong P90 P90 Les Paul Jr. And this is just him doing octaves. So didn't do anything. I just left it. What else we got? We got the bridge. These lead riffs. There's also hidden octaves underneath, which I recorded, and these lead riffs on top as well, which is played by Chris from Minority Now 5, and these are played by me, and we just combined it here. Oh wait, no, these are my these are my leads. These are my leads. These are my leads. I recorded these, and they kind of have this spacey kind of sound to it. So if I play the intro, just kind of very, very, very subtle, spacey kind of sound that we used here. And then, using a lot of processing. So I'm just trying to give it some mid-range because they were sounding thin, especially for a lead. Cutting out the 4K because it sounds pokey. The poke frequency, but then just trying to add a little bit more of bring some of it back, but at a different frequency at 3.2 with the Neve, and then adding some more bite. It may seem counterproductive, but since they're different EQs, the curves are a little bit different, so it's gonna sound different. It's not gonna be like boosting and attenuating the same frequency. So that's the nice part about these EQs, having different ones. And, I'm adding some low end here because they're sounding so thin. But, I'm also cutting out the high end because it was sounding too brittle. Remember in the last video that you could make something sound more thicker by, cutting out the higher frequencies because your ear's just going to focus on the mids. And then we got the electric guitar pieces just so we don't lose any of the notes when they're, especially in a dense mix. Okay, so... I guess the next thing I'll show you is if I just kind of fast forward here, because I guess the solo, if you want to see the solo. So here's the guitar solo. So the solo kind of has this kind of weird kind of tone to it. So the way I got that, aside from the standard VTM, is that I cut out a lot of the frequencies. There's a lot of cutting. There's a lot of boosting in the mid range, like almost a full boost. Again, almost a full boost again with the Neve and some compression again to make it sound like that sound. So let's hear it without it first. So that's EQing for... That's EQing for effect, right? And here we have the telephone. So I kind of got that muffled sound, but it wasn't enough. So I added another, phone voice and tried to make it clean as possible using the air EQ. Also, very, very great EQ. I'm so glad I bought this. It's probably one of the best EQs out there, especially for mastering. So let's listen to the solo. Okay, so now I just want to go through the lead vocal because everything else is pretty much the same. But just for the sake of time here. So let's listen to the verse vocal. This is the one I kind of just want to focus on because it was the hardest sound to get. As you can see, there's a lot of plugins going on. So I drove the VTM like it was like fucking no tomorrow. So let's listen to the vocal.
Rage, like this tear gas in the crowd. Do you wanna live out loud? But the air is barely breathing.
Okay, so VTM, VMR is going nuts. Okay, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, almost 9. Oh, 8. I got a full VMR rack. A full VMR rack doing its thing, okay? So what do we got? We got the virtual drive. Let me see the time here. Okay, 25 minutes. It's going to be a 30-minute video. Anyway, FG73 doing its job, okay? You know the drill. Didn't use the channel. I actually built it off a preset, and, I actually just added my own stuff. So the virtual mix bus is actually adding more color than a channel would. So this is just, to give that nice distortion. Added a lot of 4K, which I don't usually do because remember I'm always cutting out the pokies. And I also added some low end. I also added a low end too because it's this kind of weird distorted sound. Sounds like a radio, but at the same time has this low end thickness that I noticed. So I used the FG Big, FG Big custom series lift to add some low end, add some presence. And then it has a really, really compressed sound like it's supposed to be in a radio or something. So we went for it all buttons in, the monster, doing its thing. Vocal warm and big setting. Sounded great to me. I think I did a little bit. No, I didn't even touch it. It just sounded perfect the way it was. And then we're just using the Vocals Classic preset, which is pretty much, I just used it for the setting the attack and release. And I think I did a little bit of adjusting there and, the inputs and outputs as well. And then I did some more compression. So this is some stage compression. This thing is compressed like it's not even fucking funny. Because that's just how you get that really aggressive sound. It sucked all the life out of it, but that's the point of this particular vocal. So let's listen to it without it.
Rage, like this tear gas in the crowd. Do you wanna live out loud? But the air is barely breathing. Rise of the slums to the off for the anti-social me.
I didn't want any of the vocals to kind of like jump out like this. I wanted it to sound very, just like it. Keep it in that one spot. Keep it in that one spot because it's supposed to sound like a radio at a certain distance. As usual, we got the C4 doing its thing.
Rage, like this tear gas in the crowd.
Especially when you're doing like a radio kind of vocal, it's gonna get really, really fucked up in the 2K, 4K range. So we're getting rid of that. De-esser, as usual, just doing its thing, just doing some de-essing without it sounding lispy like that. And then we got the air EQ, just to give that more phone voice because it wasn't enough. And then we got our classic vocal rider just doing, the music sidechain and all that. I don't even ride vocals anymore because this plugin is so fucking good. I guess gangs, but gangs, the gangs. I think just for this one, I just do CLA vocals. I kind of just cheated, just wanted it done, and just gave some slap, give some stereo, made it sound a little bit wider. And that's pretty much it. There's also some distortion on it. I think I put a little bit too much, but now that I'm thinking back at it, but just adding distortion through the virtual channel here, and compressing the shit out of it with FG Bomber and the Monster, and using the SSL to do some cleanup, all in one convenient spot. I could have used the Air EQ, but I love the convenience of using the virtual mix rack. Okay, so looks like I actually did it this time. Okay, so pretty much, yeah, so this was Revolution Radio, and yeah, that was the video. So please like, share, subscribe. And the next video, I don't know what it's gonna be yet, but I got a few requests in the last Revolution Radio video. Be sure to watch the music cover if you have not watched that yet, and be sure to leave a song request in the comment section here or any of the other videos, and you can check that out. I hope this helped you. Remember, you can download the stems for free, and you can just go to town with them and use them for whatever, as long as you credit them to Green Day and myself for actually creating them, and Minority 905 as well, for helping for actually recording some of the parts there. Okay, guys, so I will see you in the next one. All right, 7-Level whoop.